developments. Well, the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development is responsible for a set of different variety of portfolios. Basically, we are responsible for putting the Agenda 2030, which is aligned by the SDGs, the Agenda 2030. It's Egypt Vision 2030, which is aligned with SDGs and aligned with Africa Agenda 2063. This is being done through a coordinated effort. It's a policy dialogue that we come out with this document. This is a live document that we update every couple of years in order to incorporate all the developments that happen locally, regionally, and internationally. We get out, of course, we have a unit for the national account, so we get out the growth, the national account growth for different sectors and the national GDP, and we put projections, of course, for the growth. We have a macro policy unit that or recommends a policy, economic policy reform, like the structural reform agenda for the economic committee to approve. In addition to that, I supervise or proudly chair the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Egypt, which is an main investment arm of the government. Its main role is to crowd in private sector, not to crowd out private sector, and to unleash Egypt's potential and have the country as an investment gateway for Africa. So this is in a nutshell. I supervise, of course, the statistics department, the CAFMES, the statistics department, where we got out all the different statistics and census, whether it's the population census, inflation indicators, poverty through the household and income survey. And of course, we also recommend to the CAPMES different census or statistics that we need in order to have the policies being based on right figures and right indicators. So this is basically...
It's quite a big nutshell.
Yes.
As it seems. Let's start with a different one here.
I do an important thing, which is I distribute the investment, the public investment to different ministries, according, of course, to the programs at each ministry. So this is a part that we coordinate with the Ministry of Finance on the National Investment Plan. So we have the National Investment Plan, which is a core. I forgot that. That's important. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that many things to do, not surprising, things to talk. But let's talk about last year before we talk about this year. Last year was a difficult year globally. Speaking as a Brit, it wasn't great for us. It was even harder for Egypt. The exogenous shocks, there were challenges. But yet you still achieved, relatively decent growth rate. I'd like you just to give a bit of context to that. How did you manage those crises? And then segue a little bit into your views on whether this year is going to be better or not.
Well, actually, before talking about the Egypt's macroeconomic policy, I think it's important to shed light on the global macroeconomic setting, because we are basically all as policymakers, we are mandated to operate in a complex global economic setting. We have came out from the COVID-19 pandemic, and then we were struck by the geopolitical challenges. So it's basically, we are operating within multiple shocks. And it is not the gravity or the extent of the shock, rather than the cross-current nature of the shock, which makes actually policy making difficult. It's quite a challenge, because we came out of the COVID-19 with shortage in supply chain, which affected the prices. Inflation was going up high. Central banks hurried out to increase interest rates in order to mitigate inflation. So we are in a stagflation situation, which is usually we say it is quite a challenge for the monetary policy mix. Now it's quite striking. So there is a lot of trade-offs that the policymakers have to do in order to really manage this complex global setting and this poly crisis that we are all witnessing. And if it is quite challenging for developed countries, it's more acute for emerging and developing countries. Because for emerging and developing countries, first, you need the fiscal space, because within these high prices of commodities, whether it's food or oil or energy, you cannot transfer this increase in prices to the consumer, like in most developed countries. You need the fiscal space in order to have a social safety net. So Ministry of Finance have to allocate an amount of money for the social protection, which is quite challenging within this contractionary monetary policy, and at the same time you need to have the fiscal space. But Egypt managed last year, within this challenging circumstances, to achieve 6.6 economic growth rate. This year, we are targeting between 4.5 to 5% growth, but we always say as economists, growth is important, is necessary, but it's not enough. What is important is A, what is driving this growth, and B, does this affect employment or not? So A, yes, it is coming from productive sectors, it's coming from ICT, ICT has been growing extensively by 16.5%. throughout the past years, and this year too. Agriculture is increasing over 4.5% for the first time, coming out from 3 to 3.5%. Manufacturing, tourism, Suez Canal is increasing by about 30%. Exports have increased 53% during the past fiscal year. And what is important is FDI has increased about 90%. So A, yes, it is coming, growth is being driven by productive sectors, and B, unemployment rate have reached almost 7.4%, which means that this growth has really its impact on employment. So the other thing is that at the same time, we are also putting, due to the pressure that happened on the exchange rate, and we had to do a short of, due to the pressure on the exchange rate, we had to do a sort of a cut in the public investment. So we had to cut public investment, especially in infrastructure, by about 20% in order to ration the public investment and to mitigate inflation, and of course to have this only in the infrastructure public investment by about 20%. And as you know, over the past years, we had to increase public investment tremendously in order to restore public confidence and to raise the level of infrastructure that has been deteriorating before 2014, but now the government is working on prioritizing the role of the private sector through its structural reform agenda that we have launched in 2020, having the role of the private sector and enhancing the role of the private sector at the heart and the core of our structural reform agenda.
How do you view this coming year? I mean, I think in the markets and in the investment community internationally, I wouldn't say it's equally divided, but there are definitely people who think the worst is behind us. Hence equity markets going up. And then there are others who are more bearish, who say this is a dead cat bounce. Once we get back into the spring, the reality of high interest rates, geopolitical uncertainty, high energy prices is going to come back into the market. What as a minister of planning in particular, obviously that's a forward-looking role. What are you thinking about seeing for 2023 that's similar or different to 2022?
Well, I see that. Let me start by saying something that at uncertain times it is difficult to project. And and we always say it is basically not an estimate, and a scientific estimate rather than some guesstimates. But Egypt has a great potential. We see the stock market had made a turnaround due to the corrections that the government had taken. There is a great appetite for investment in Egypt. So we see that Egypt is also working on different structural reform and institutional reforms that will make Egypt as the best country in the region for investment in the next 3 years. So we definitely see a major turnaround, especially for foreign direct investment in the next 3 years.